Okay, so how does a bank run start? Well, it starts with the bank becoming what we say insolvent. So a bank is insolvent if its stockholders' equity is negative. So stockholders' equity is less than zero. So that happens if the value of its liabilities is greater than its assets. So this means liabilities, what it owes people, becomes greater than its assets. So if that's true, we say the bank is insolvent. So the bank is solvent if its assets are greater than its liabilities. And so once a bank becomes insolvent, investors in the bank or stakeholders in the bank who have deposits may become worried that the bank is going to go under and close, right? It's not able to cover its liabilities. That will make depositors nervous. So how does it happen that a bank becomes insolvent, right? So given the required reserve ratio, a bank can't really start insolvent. They're going to tend to start as solvent. Over time, as the value of its assets may change, that could cause a bank to move from solvent to insolvent. So let's take a really simple example here. So I'm going to make a simple balance sheet. So we have liabilities and equity, and we have assets. So I'm going to keep it really simple and say the bank has some reserves. So we'll say they have $10 million in reserves, and they have some other assets. We'll call those the loans of $100 million. So they have total assets of $110 million. So liabilities, it's got its deposits. And we'll say that they have $80 million worth of deposits. Okay, so that's their total liabilities then. Is the 80 million. And so the difference between total assets and liabilities is their equity is 30 million. 110 million minus the 80 million in liabilities gives me $30 million worth of stockholders' equity. That's how much the bank is worth. So the bank right now is solvent. So I add up the total over here and I get 80 plus 30, or 110. So again, just a review that both sides of that balance sheet have to add up equally. All right. Now, what happens if the value of the loans that the bank has decreases? So maybe people start defaulting on the loans, right? So maybe we have an economic crisis and people are laid off and they're no longer able to pay their mortgages. That decreases the value of the bank's assets, its loans. So what happens if the value of my loans decreases? Let's make a pretty extreme case, decreases by 40% to $60 million. So now my loans are only worth $60 million, which means my total assets only add up to $70 million. Now my stockholders' equity has become negative, minus $10 million. It's not $110 million minus 80, it's $70 million minus 80. So at this point, the bank is now insolvent. They owe more to customers in deposits than they have available in assets. When that happens, the depositors may become nervous about the bank, come to the bank and say, I want to take my money out and put it in another bank. I think you're going to go under. If everybody does that, the bank is going to be in trouble. They only have $10 million available. They'll run out of money. The bank run continues. At some point, then the bank becomes completely insolvent and has to close. Stops operating. All right. So now this may have made you all very nervous, right? So if you didn't know anything about the fractional reserve banking system, I've now told you that there is a chance you could go to the bank and the bank won't be able to give you the money in your account. You may be freaking out and say, why in the world am I keeping my money in a bank then? I thought they were supposed to be safe. So the banking system has evolved a lot over time, and there's a lot of protections that you have to prevent bank runs from happening. So they're much less frequent than what they used to be, and it's generally speaking is not a problem. So what protections do we have? The main one, the one that should make you feel very, very secure keeping your money in a bank, is federal deposit insurance. So we have deposit insurance. So if you go to a bank, you may have noticed a sign out front that says something about FDIC. This is an FDIC bank. And what that stands for is Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. So that little emblem outside of the bank tells you that for sure your deposits are backed by this federal deposit insurance, which pretty much all banks are engaged in this, right? So what this does is it guarantees $250,000 worth of deposits are covered by deposit insurance. So if your bank was to go under and the bank lost your money, you could get up to $250,000 worth of deposits back with the FDIC insurance. So that should make you feel very comfortable. So most of you right now aren't really thinking about bank accounts that have more than $250,000 in them. And so you'll generally speaking be covered for whatever amount of money you put in your bank as a checking account. Now, this doesn't apply to stock market accounts and those types of things where the value in your account is going to fluctuate with the value of the stock. So if you put all of your life savings into the stock market or in a particular stock and that company goes under, you have no insurance against that. You're just going to lose your money. So in that sense, you should feel very comfortable putting your money into a bank. It's protected by insurance. Now, just as kind of a quick overview, what we have here is the rate of bank failure. So what percent of banks in the country have failed over time? And we'll see that really it's not a huge issue. So there was really one really bad time. That was the Great Depression. In fact, a lot of the laws that we have coming forward with respect to deposit insurance came out of this Great Depression era. A lot of the way our economy works and is protected came out of the Great Depression. And so you can see after that period of time, we've had a couple of other ones. So there was a savings and loan crisis. So you can go and look these up at your leisure if you're interested. So in the early 90s, we had a savings and loan crisis where a lot of banks failed. And this was the most recent recession, 2007 to 2009. We had a similar increase in bank failures. That was a financial crisis. So we'll hopefully learn a little bit more about that financial crisis as we go through the semester here. And we'll talk about how the current situation could potentially play itself out as a financial crisis and what the Federal Reserve and the government and other institutions are doing to try and prevent this. So what I'd like you to do is to go ahead and answer this question on Learning Objective 6 in Canvas, get a better feel for how these bank runs operate, and we'll kind of move on and hopefully learn a little bit more about the banking system and specifically the Federal Reserve.